Ifeoluwa Dare-Johnson. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Tech Hub.
Hi, thank you. It is so great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. Bright and clear. I like the way it is over there. First of all, let me get your reaction to the Twitter suspension. People call it a knee-jerk reaction by the federal government and all sorts. But let me get your reaction, speaking from the perspective of the tech industry in which you belong to.
I think that what has happened is just quite unfortunate, considering that, I mean, the government exists, typically should exist to support the private sector, right? To support the tech ecosystem, especially at this point where, the tech ecosystem is beginning to get some traction from, the international space, right? So it's just not good for the ecosystem, if I'm to put it lightly, right? We have investors who are counting on us reaching Twitter audiences. So for example, what do you say to a crypto organization who does maybe peer-to-peer, who cannot advertise because it's against the law, right? But then they're able to acquire customers on Twitter. I mean, as I say, we have about 30 million users on Twitter, Nigerians on Twitter. So what happens to that company? What happens to the confidence that the investors have in their ability to acquire users, right? What happens to the tech founders who are on Twitter, who are able to tweet and update their investors about what's going on in the company, right? What happens to the brand, the tech brand, who is painting themselves in great light so that they can attract quality talent, right? I mean, we can't even begin to explain the impact of this in the ecosystem. It's just, again, I mean, everybody has already said the major thing is knee-jerk. And I think this happens all the time where there's a problem, right? But instead of the government to say, you know what, let's think through how can we provide solutions to these, right? Our government basically just says, you know what, let's take an action no matter how crazy it sounds, and we backward integrate from there. So yeah, I mean, that's my initial reaction to that. It's just a lot of moving pieces that the timing is just not great for us. This has happened. I mean, it's not today. People have been talking about how we need to regulate these social media giants, right? So it's normal, right? You want them to pay tax, absolutely. But when it happens that what the first reaction is to ban Twitter, not legal proceedings, not we're suing you for this, not we need a representative, not we have sent you a warning, nothing, and then ban, right? It is at that point that it becomes, do we have people who have the best interest of the tech ecosystem at heart, in government, in power, right? Because it's just, I don't want to say it doesn't make sense, but right, there goes it. But yeah, it's just a mess at this point, and that's to put it lightly.
I mean, Ifeoluwa, if you say it doesn't make sense, it's absolutely understandable, because the person who actually lost or is still losing so much revenue,
right?
Somebody who probably made all the investment using Twitter as a mode of expression or a way of reaching his or customers cannot do that again. Now, for the purpose of those who don't understand, because a lot of people still think the Twitter thingy is all about the government, saying you are not going to be able to express yourself anymore using the platform. I think it goes beyond that. Let's see the downside, especially financially, the number of losses, amount lost from this act by the federal government of Nigeria.
Yeah, I mean, there have been several speculations. There are people who are saying we're losing close to $250,000 per week, just because of the ban, right? But look at it this way, and I'm going to break it down, right? So I run, a tech company called HealthTracka, and I mean, we're basically trying to bring diagnostics to people's homes, right? When we launched, sometimes in May, right? April, May, right? There are a lot of people who downloaded the app purely based on Twitter, right? People retweeting, people talking about it, and we got downloads. And not only downloads, people actually paid for their tests, right? What have we done? What we have done is there are people who wouldn't have known what their health status is, who have, because we came on Twitter, So imagine that. That's revenue one. The other part of it is we actually may have saved somebody's life, right? So let's go back to revenue. There are companies who their customer acquisition strategy is built around Twitter, right? Information companies, literally. Right now, how do you reach people? In fact, there are organizations who, when they want to give their press release, when they want to give their, when they want to crowdfund for investment, they do it on Twitter. I still remember the story of the lady who went to Harvard. I was right there on Twitter, was able to crowdfund, a tuition for Twitter. She's done now. She did her master's, but it is just what happens on Twitter. There was someone who got, prospective leg from Kind Nigerians on Twitter. So imagine people who have gotten jobs on Twitter. So when you begin to talk about the layers of what the revenue could have been, or what of the loss in revenue, we can see these things, right? So, and you don't need to be a CEO, you don't need to be a tech founder, right? There are people right now who will tell you, if you want to get jobs, right, just follow all the tech founders on Twitter, and you most likely will shoot your shots and get jobs. And there are lots of opportunities right there. There are people who are influencers who make their living off the fact that they've created so much content, they've created value on the platform, right? And you're now at the point where do I want to keep tweeting so that I can have food, right, on my table, or do I want to, obey my government and then I go starving, right? These are basic questions that anybody would ask themselves, right? Because you're losing revenue. There are companies who run Twitter ads to reach people, right? So again, who is losing, right? Because that's what you need to ask yourself. Who is actually losing? Is it the government? Is it Nigerians, or is it Twitter? Because at the end of the day, we hear things like, Twitter is going to feel it if Nigerians are not on Twitter. Really? Really? Who is gonna? Who needs more? Who needs more? Than the other, right? So when it comes to revenue, absolutely, we're losing a lot of money. We're losing opportunities every day. People are finding it hard to basically just pass on opportunities that will make them money, right? I know a company who got their funding through Twitter. Basically, like someone in the US saw their company and saw saw the track record and, DM'd them, and the rest money, that's it. I can mention the name of the company, right? But so imagine, and I think at that point it was $3 million. Imagine that wasn't there.
Ifeoluwa, it's sometimes burdensome that apart from, the domestic losses that we're facing, that this might affect, affect investors. Imagine how Nigerians felt a few months ago when Twitter announced that it was going to touch base in Ghana and you're operating out of Ghana. Is this not going to cause more big tech firms that probably want to find market in Nigeria and hopefully provide jobs, for the Nigerian human population? Is this not going to chase them away?
I think it definitely would cause them to have a rethink, right? So, you heard that I think it was last year, where we were so excited. Facebook was finally coming into Nigeria. They want to set up an office. The last we heard was, they're not sure they're coming again, right? As that now, we're not sure what, again, if it was your company, you also have a rethink, right? And this is not because again, some of these things, you mentioned that this should be a balanced perspective, right? Yeah, I agree that there should be some level of taxation on these companies as they come into the country, right? And this is done properly with structures, with legal structures where you actually put things in place for these guys to follow, right? But when things like this happen, which shows that these guys can just wake up one day and my business goes to zero that day. Right. So why will anybody in their right thinking senses, how would you even tell your board members that you want to go to Nigeria and set up your headquarters, right? When they can see what's happening. If they decide one day and say all foreign companies should not, these guys can do anything, right? So absolutely, right now I will tell you for free that a lot of tech companies are already considering, having their headquarters outside of Nigeria, even for Nigerian founders, right? Because it just makes sense, right? So if anything happens, that just carry your bags and carry your people and get out, right? And it's just unfortunate that we need to be having this kind of conversations when you don't have governments to support you. And I mean, the ecosystem has been through a lot. We're finally at the point where we're getting some recognition. Guys are working super hard, and I will tell you for free, like it is crazy out here, right? Everybody's fighting to just ensure that what we're building is working and we're actually getting people to use the product, we're solving real problems, right? So it should be that the government is working with you, right, to ensure that you become attractive to international investors. But it looks like it's the other way around. Like, why would anybody touch us right now, right? So it definitely it is something we need to think through, and I really hope that the government is listening to advice from I'm hoping some representative of the tech companies to say, guys, don't kill us. Forgive us if we have offended you. Forgive us, but guys, we want a Nigeria we can pass on to our children, right? So yeah, let's just make it.
I mean, Ifeoluwa, this is more like, a few months ago, even a few weeks ago, we were happy that the government was beginning to put so much attention in the tech sector. Digital skills training here and there, partnering with different big tech companies to, give digital education even to rural communities. And so it seemed like one step forward, several steps backwards. Speaking of taxation, which the government is really, clamoring, on, because they feel these guys are making so much money from Nigeria and Nigeria is not really getting so much from there. You mentioned the likes of WhatsApp, Netflix, and the other big tech giants that offer services to the country. I want to ask you your reaction to that. And I wanted to tie it to something a friend of mine mentioned earlier on, and he said something about the reason why sometimes they BS us, is because we don't have our own technology. I mean, we rely on the big tech firms a whole lot, from the Microsofts of this world to Facebook to Twitter to the entertainment streaming platform Netflix and the rest of them. What does Nigeria have? If we had our own, we'd be able to call anybody's bluff and say, we've got our own, you can find your way and we are not going to cry foul. Your reaction?
I think like with many other things and infrastructure in Nigeria, the fact is we're behind in many ways, right? These guys have electricity. Do we even have 24-hour electricity, right? So when we begin to compare these things, we're at the point where we have a budding tech ecosystem, for example, right? What is going to get us from where we are right now to us owning the kind of platforms that can command, millions of users? It is actually building the ecosystem, right? So, you can't begin to compare these things. These guys started before us, number one. They have some of the infrastructure that they have to even build the product and the platform. It's just incomparable. And the unfortunate thing, as far as I'm concerned, is these hasty decisions that our government make it's just too familiar, right? It happens over and over again, and it is almost like this is just logic, right? If you do not build your own people, how do they in turn innovate, right? So if you're coming and saying, we want you guys to build the next Twitter, we want you to, and that's what, as part of whatever initiative that is, that's what we're doing. I hear now that they're speaking to China because China had a similar age, and then they were able to stop this big four guys, right? But guess what? China has one of the most innovative products in the world, right? These guys are able to mirror and match the innovation happening in the Western world. They're able to match it. It's just, you can't compare Nigeria to a company like that. To a country like that, right? So before you say, we're just going to use our own, we're going to, how do we even begin? Who invests in the company, right? Who builds it? How do we build that? So it is almost like we're going to the point where we can begin to build these opportunities and have our own platforms, right? I mean, our fintech guys are doing incredible things right now, right? How?
Yeah, that's
How
true.
on earth do you want us to get to the point where we can actually begin to build media platforms, social media platforms like this? It is the trajectory. We are on that trajectory. But if you keep stifling it, it will get to the point where we will not even have anything. I mean, I hear now what random news now that the government is on one Indian app right now, one cool app or something like that. And of course, those guys are happy that the federal government of Nigeria is now on, their platform as an official account, right? Because they banned Twitter. Guess what? Why did you go to? Did you get then? It's just like no. We can't be doing this, right, to ourselves.
Ifeoluwa, you really hit the hammer on the head with the nail. We need an enabling environment in Nigeria for the tech ecosystem to thrive. It's high time we stop depending on people from Europe, America, or China, or some parts of the world to come help develop us. We have everything it takes, like I always say, for Nigeria to become a tech powerhouse. We do hope that things turn for the better, and the federal government solves the problem with Twitter, because we need them and they need us as well, and we move forward. So thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Tech Hub, Ifeoluwa.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Great.
All right. Bye.
All right.
Yeah.